Hi, I've just added version 2 of AnimSnapPro Pro, and the main difference is UI updates to make the flow a little bit better. But I also added a brand new tool that should give you a lot of options for how you want to make objects follow each other. So I'll get to that in a moment. First, the original AnimSnapPro Pro, the main update is this UI update. So not using the compact UI, just the full UI with all the notes and the workflows as a reminder as you get to know the tool. I've now made it so it flows more naturally with how you would actually be using the tool. So first you'll be selecting your source and your snapped. Secondly, most of the time actually your object is offset from the other object you wanted to follow or wanted to snap to. So if you don't want pivot to pivot snapping, which is actually not most of the time, you'll be creating an offset helper. So I created the button here now, create offset helper. This is the same as this one here down here, but it's just now more integrated with the flow. So that's the second step. And normally your third step is to either snap batch or snap a single frame. So these three operators now is at the top, and it should flow a lot more naturally as you use the tool, and hopefully it's a little bit less intimidating. Then your extra tools down here, your reference helpers, which you do use a lot for the more complex snapping operations, they below this now. And then I've got the snap to element and the preview snap down here. But I've got an alternative to the preview snap now, and I'll run through that in a moment. It's a whole new tool really. So that would be the full UI. And then I also made the compact one a little bit more compact. Let me just collapse this new tool down here. So I've just made this a little more compact. It's all the same stuff. It's just as you got to know the tool a little bit better, you can switch to compact, and this should hopefully then help you a lot. It's also following then this new flow that's in the main UI. And then we get to this whole new tool. So when you install this new tool, it will basically go in the same tab as AnimSnapPro Pro. So you can actually, the original tool, you can close it down here. And this is the new tool. So this new tool is called AnimSnapPro Switcher. So AnimSnapPro Switcher. And this is basically a constraint switcher. So this will create constraints in the kind of like classical way. That you can then use for live animation. So it's a bit like the preview one, but this one gives you a lot more features. So with this, you can actually then set a sequence of switching constraints between different objects, like a parent handover basically, or dynamic switching. And then afterwards, you can bake it on all to keyframes and then still use it with all the other AnimSnapPro Pro tools. The main downside of this tool is it works much better if you're moving sequentially forward. If you have, say, a foot at the end pose and you want to snap that foot backwards, I would use the other one instead. But if you're moving with something sequentially forward, this would be a good way to do it. And I guess that will cover most kind of use cases. So to use this tool effectively, I think it's maybe worth just running through the basics of how it works and how it connects things. So you know what's going on kind of under the hood. So if you want to use it in different use cases, you know how to use it effectively. So basically what it does is, once you fill in like a following object here, and this is the green box here is going to be the one that's going to be constrained to different things or to the world, and to follow things at different times. First of all, you just need to define that. So I defined that over there, select the cube and define it over there. Okay, and now this is unlocked here, and this is switch to world static. So basically, if you just want the object to be static, this will just basically create a helper or empty, but I call them helpers for this purposes. So it will create a empty in world space just on the location of your green box, exactly on the pivot of the green box. And then it will copy location and copy rotation constraint this green cube or your follow object then to the helper that gets created. So when I create this, you can also set the size of the helper here. I made it just a little bit bigger in the box here. So I can just kind of see what's going on. So it created this helper now. And then also it then put here the frame on which this helper was created. And this was then constrained to the helper. And if you look at the constraints here, you can see it made the location and the rotation constraints here for that cube. And it set the value to 1. So from this point onwards, you can see here the keyframes we created. That key, this will have 0 influence, and on this key, this will have 1 influence. So now, if I select this over here, and then I select this helper, I can actually then move that green box with this helper instead of moving it independently, because this is constrained now. So the movement's not going to work anymore. So now, let's take this over here and say from frame 20, set the key over there and go to frame 40. And then I rotate this, say 180. So yeah, 180. Okay, there we go. And then from frame 20, instead of following the world and being static, I wanted to start following this instead. So at frame 20, so first I go to frame 20, then I select my new target object. So it's filled in over there. Make sure I'm on the frame that I want the switch to happen. And then I'm going to switch now to this target item. And you can see there that at this frame, there's a new helper that has been created over there. So here you can see on the helper, this represents where the other object is, and then the helper itself lines up with the world space of where your box is at that particular point. And if I select this, I can see here my keyframes. And you can see here, this location and rotation constraint has now been created, where that was 1 for these two above. Now for the next one, it switches to this one instead. And if I select this, then I select my helper, you can see now my box is following this helper instead. My follow object is following this helper instead. So this is under the hood of how this then works. And once again over here, if I select that, I select my helper, you can see it's now constrained to this helper instead. So now I'll just show you then a practical example of how to use this. So there I've defined now this is going to be my snapped object. So the first one I want to snap it to is this one. So I just fill in the field there. And then I want it to follow that. So I switch to this target item. Then it will create this entry for me so I can see where the switch is happening. This will give you the frame number then as well. Now, if I go in the timeline and go to when I want this one to take over, around 30. So I select this one. So I select this one, fill it in, and then switch to that one at frame 30. It's very important that you're actually on the frame that you want the switch to happen. So the switch will happen on your current frame when you create these switches. And then you go to frame 60, and then I'm going to follow that one, and I'm going to switch to that one. So now you can see this whole thing has been created. And you can leave it as this is if this is the animation you require. You can always come back to this and you can see when your switches are happening. But you can also then bake it all down to keyframes. And this will bake your active range to keyframes and remove all these constraint setups. But you can also retime this. So say for this one, if I want this handover to be at frame 40 instead, first I'm going to do it without this realign helpers on, so you can just see what happens. So if I select this one, I can then put in a time here, so change that to 40, and then I can set this. This handover will now happen at frame 40 instead. But when I originally created these offset helpers, it was created in a different spot. So here I can now go, and that's why you get this snap between those two. You can fix that by just realigning the helper. So now it will stick to that one up until frame 40, and then it will go there. So when you use this realign helper, just make sure that you actually got the item in the list selected that you want to realign. So you select that first and then you realign. Yeah, so you can see this one is misaligned now because it ended up in a different position when it's switched. So here as well, I can just select this and then realign the helper. And then everything should then work again. If you don't want to manually go and realign all these, you can do it where it's just going to realign the one that you're actually doing the retiming on. Or if you have both of these clicked on, it will just automatically do this for you. So if I undo these, yeah, so there's my original one. Now if I retime this to frame 40 and I switch these two on, now if I retime it, it should have done then all this for you, realigned all your helpers again. So once you've done your animation, and this object is now constrained to all these different helpers that lines up with its current position in time. But if you want to change anything, so say while this is going to there, and I want to change this, so this is the one starting at frame 40. So this is the one I want to change this movement of. I can now go and select this helper, and this helper is basically the helper that this is now constrained to. And I can go and I can animate this. So say if I go here and I insert a keyframe, then I go here, and then I rotate this. So it's going to go and now rotate. So you can use any of these and do further animation on these by selecting these helpers that it creates. And now obviously my next one is going to be misaligned, so I can just select that one. I'm going to have to jump there and I can just realign my helper again. And now it's rotating there, and then it hands over to this one. Also then, if you want to see a better visual representation of where switches are happening, you can actually mark it here so you can see where they are happening. And then you can delete these as well. And then once you finish with this, you can actually go and then bake the entire thing. And then I can also go and delete all the helpers that it had. And then this is just pure keyframes. So to quickly run through this again, first you define the snapped object. Then here you can set your target, the item to switch to follow to. You can also adjust here the helper sizes that's being created. Over here you can switch to the world if it's static, if you want to keep something in the same place. And here you can switch to this target item defined here. And these switches will happen on your current keyframe. And then once they are created, you can go here, select them, and you can delete any of these switches. You can delete all of them. That will delete all the helpers as well. You can retime them. And if you do retime, you've got these options to automatically realign all your helpers. Any of these, then you can select the related helper that these are constrained to, and you can animate them separately. And then you can also manually realign any of these selected points where the switch happens, so it realigns again to those. Then here you can add timeline markers, you can leave timeline markers, and here you can bake it all back to keyframes. Okay, so here's another example of just like one of the kind of like novel ways of how you can use this to bypass like normal hierarchies. So here it's just got a normal bone hierarchy, just 4 bones here. First of all, I'm just going to make it so these are able to move. So let me just go and select those and disconnect the bones so they can actually move independently. But it's still just the same hierarchy. So now let's see here. Let's delete this. So if I want to animate these independently of their hierarchy, one way that you can do this is, say, for this last one, I'm just going to just define it over here. Oh, sorry, wrong one. With the bone, click on it. So now it's defined over there. And then I'm going to switch this to world. So when I switch it to world, it will create a new helper and it will be attached to that helper. So it will be constrained to that helper instead. It won't break this hierarchy, it will just be constrained to the helper instead. So if I do that, then I've got this helper over here. So select this over here and I can select my helper and then I can move this around. But say I want to take it a step further, I can go and I can also do the same for this one. So if I select this one over there and also create a world static helper over there, so this one be constrained to this one. So if I now go and select my helper, you see I can actually move this independently of the hierarchy. I could have constrained this to something else, static or moving, but the point being that I can now independently move these. If I actually look at my armature, my actual hierarchy hasn't changed. So let's do this one more time. Select this one. I'm also going to set that to the world. So now this can move independently. Okay, so I've got these all kind of moving in different directions. When I now go and bake this all down, now bake that one. Now this one, if I go into pose mode, this is the one I baked. So this would be keyframes. Those would still be constrained, but let's go and do all of them. So I just need to define this bone again to get back to it. So select this one so I can see here what I'm working with. And now I can bake this one. And then I just need to go define that one so I can bring up its details. And then bake this one as well. Now I can actually go delete all these. So all these bones have moved independently. If I actually go to pose mode, the keyframes for each of those have been baked onto this. The entire hierarchy is still in place, just like it was before. So yeah, there's kind of like lots of ways that you can use this to actually kind of bypass your hierarchies. It just depends what other constraints are on them as well. So if there's an IK constraint on it, it might be a little bit more complicated to do stuff like this. But if it's just a normal hierarchy, you can start doing bones and move them independently without the children following. Cool. I've got the Discord channel as well if you want to post any questions there. But I hope you find this tool useful. Thank you.